I just wanna be free, and I just wanna be me. And I want lots of friends that invite me to their parties. I don't wanna change, and I don't wanna be ashamed. I'm the spirit of my hair, it's all the glory that I bear. I'm a Harry on my hair, I'm a Harry on my hair, I'm a Harry on my hair. It's all the glory that I bear. I'm a Harry on my hair, it's all the glory that I bear. I'm a Harry on my hair, I'm a hair, yeah, yeah. I'm a hair, yeah, yeah. I'm a hair, yeah, yeah. I've had enough, this is my prayer, that I'll die living just as free as my hair. I've had enough, this is my prayer, that I'll die living just as free as my hair.
To our keynote speakers today. We'll start on the end with Lisa. Lisa Evans Dame is a mama dragon, wife, and a mother to 5 mostly grown children. She loves to travel, and she's always ready for an adventure. She finds beauty and inspiration in her life by working with homeless children, hiking in the mountains, and bike riding with her family and friends. And she was the one that was kind enough to speak to us and recruit some people to come with her, so I really appreciate her doing that. And then we have Jana on this end. Jana Moffitt is the mother of 4 sons and 1 daughter. She has 10 amazing grandkids. Her whole life has been her family. She attended the University of Utah and worked in the medical field, but her real life goal was to be the best mother and best wife she could possibly be. Being a devout Mormon and raising a believing family was her entire focus. All 4 of her sons served LDS missions, and 4 of her children were married in the temple. Her world began to change some 13 years ago when she knew she had a gay son. When he came out 2.5 years ago, her world began to spin in a totally different direction. Now she's a mama dragon, a fierce advocate for LGBTQ plus individuals, and Mormonism is no longer the focus of her life. Then in the middle here, we have Kathryn Hueth. She's a mama dragon, wife, and mother to 2 children whom she adores. She's passionate about living life authentically, joyfully, and pursuing truth wherever that path may lead. And she feels strongly about everyone having the right to do the same. She believes in leaving others feeling better about themselves after having shared time together. That's great. We should add that to the Oasis values. She enjoys traveling as often as she can, design, reading, and spending hours enjoying good food and great conversations surrounded by family and friends. So these 3 ladies are here to share their personal stories with you today. And after they've each had a chance to speak, we'll take this mic off and let them pass it back and forth for Q&A. So if you have any questions, hold them for the end. Please welcome Jana, Kathryn, and Lisa.
Yes, I have a gay son. His name is Scott. He's 26. He lives in North Carolina right now. I helped him move there about a month ago to begin a master's program at Duke. He will live in Durham for 2 years as he studies. I doubt that he will ever move back to Salt Lake, and that's okay, even though I miss him terribly. He's studying to become a physician's assistant. Duke is one of the best programs in the country for what he wants to learn. Scott is smart. He excelled in school and piano. He graduated from the U with a major in biology and a minor in chemistry. Our story about him ends great, but I also realize our story isn't over. I believed Scott was gay when he was just a toddler. Yes, he was born that way. He told me that he knew he was gay when he was about 7. He didn't know the words for what that meant yet. But he did know he was different. He did know he didn't fit in where he was when he was with the other boys. We moved into an area of the valley, Cottonwood Heights, that had 20 boys his age. Every time he would go to an activity with all of these boys, I'd wonder why he didn't want to do what they were doing. Why didn't he fit in? What was going on? So those thoughts that I had when he was young started to make me question. I wondered if someday I might have a gay child. The thing that he wanted to do the most was spend time with his sister Jess, who's sitting here on the front row. Jess was his life. He followed her everywhere. He did everything she did. When she dressed up, he dressed up. They were the best of friends. I knew what it was like to raise typical boys, but he was nothing like them. Scott became really good at lying, and I became good at lying too. You see, Scott didn't want to be gay. When he verbally told us he was gay at 13, because of some things that we had found on the internet, we knew it was him. We knew that this was probably coming true, the things that we'd thought all these years. He denied it, and 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 denied it. It was the hardest 2 days of our lives. Finally, we got Scott to admit that this was who he is. And that day changed our lives. Scott didn't want to be gay. How was he going to make being gay fit into a Mormon world? How was he going to make that work? I didn't know. How was I going to make that work? He started learning early on how to fit in wherever he went. He had a lot of friends. He learned how to make school work. He learned how to make college work. He learned how to make going to young men's work. He spent his time pretending he was somebody he wasn't. And I, knowing all these things were probably a part of who he was, pretended to. I let it happen. I have some regrets, but Scott knows, we've talked about it a lot, that I did my best. My husband and I both did our best to help and support him. Even his brothers didn't know when he came out to us when he was 13. It was a secret for a long, long time. So knowing that he didn't want to be gay, we went to our bishop. We saw 3 different bishops. We saw 2 different stake presidents. And all of the counsel that they gave us was to send him to therapy. And my husband, who's also here, is a really, really great researcher. If you give him a project, he knows what to do to fix that. And he spends hours reading. So he got on this one. He found the best therapist he could find in the city. And when we told Scott we'd found a therapist that could help him change his sexual orientation, Scott was so afraid that if he even walked into that therapist reception area, that someone might see him, someone might recognize him, someone might know why he was there and suspect that he was gay. He couldn't go. So we found a therapist in Provo. I snuck him to Provo for 6 years. Every couple of weeks, Scott and I would get in the car and drive to Provo. We saw a number of different therapists there, and it would break my heart to think of him sitting on the seat next to me as I drove to these therapy sessions, trying to help him change how he felt about himself. I did what I thought was the best thing for him and what he wanted. Okay, 6 years of that. Well, of course, it didn't change his sexual orientation. How could it? That's like saying to me, go to therapy. Guess what? You can go to therapy and you're gonna like girls. Well, guess what? I could go to therapy for the rest of my life. I would still like guys. Finally sunk in that this wasn't changing for him. Our family rallied around him, but Scott was still a secret after all those years of driving him to therapy. It was still a secret. No one knew but Jess, my husband, and I. In quiet moments, Mark and I would discuss how do we make this work? How does this work in our church? I'd sit in Relief Society, I'd sit in sacrament meeting, and I'd begin to weep as I realized, again, my family didn't fit like they told us. I came prepared with some toilet paper from the bathroom. I would have to leave those meetings early, often in tears. And I know that the people in those meetings were wondering, why is Jana crying so much? What's going on with her? And I hated being that girl on the back row crying. Pretty soon Sundays became a day that I really hated. I'd anticipate church coming, and I don't mean to bash the Mormon church, but it just wasn't working for me. I'd start getting anxious about it on Fridays, go to church on Sundays, hear the things that broke my heart, go home sad, then I'd recover, take a couple days to recover, and then it'd start over again. Finally, church was just too unhealthy for me, and I had to quit going. So, I wanted to know how my God didn't have a place for my boy. I felt like everything he had been told from his mission, from his stake presidents, from his bishops, from his counselors, was that he was broken and he needed to be fixed. Finally, when November happened, I was relieved to hear that my boy was going to resign. And I thought, yay, you need to be out. You need to be who you are. You need to not have this part of your life anymore. I was all about that. My husband was all about that. Before all of this happened, Scott had, you guys, I'm not even reading these anymore, so I'm just telling this. So Scott he had a pretty good, successful high school and college years. He still wasn't out. He still was pretending, and we all were. And when he graduated from college, that's when he began to tell people that he was gay. And he gave us permission to tell our children and our family that he was gay. And so then he was doing great. When all of that started happening, things changed for me. I could not understand this God. I had been able to push all the feelings down about him and just go with the flow. I was supposed to be obedient and do everything good, and I worked my tail off, and I prayed 1,000,000 hours, and I went to the temple and did all those things, but it wasn't changing. And my heart was beginning to get so sad. So when Scott came out and resigned in November, that's when things really started to change for me. I finally was able to talk about it. I was finally able to connect with people who also had gay children and who were Mormon. And I was blessed to meet the Mama Dragons, who completely supported me and understood me and helped me through this confusing time for me. I want to tell you that I've had to leave the church. I can't find any peace there. I wonder what kind of God my God is, because my children, my 10 grandchildren, are my life. How does this one boy not fit? It didn't make sense for me anymore. So that's when I had to leave. My God is different now. My God is a God that loves everyone. My God is an open-minded, beautiful person who wants everybody to do their best. I had times when, I want to tell you about one incident in how I feel about my change. This is part of how I feel where I live now. I have been in my neighborhood for 20-some years. Now when I put my headphones in and I began my walk around the neighborhood to get some exercise, I feel like people are talking about me. What happened to Jana? They're all confused. They don't know what to say to me. They don't know how to approach me because I've left. I haven't been for a year. So I feel like a hostage in my own home. And that's not a good way to live. I am feeling stronger about my life and stronger about myself, and I'm able to talk about my son and my leaving and my new friendships and my new life, and it's fabulous. It's fabulous. But the November policy to me was damaging, and as you've probably heard about all of the suicides and all of the problems that have come with that policy change, it's completely broken my heart, and I would cry for days and days and days. My husband, I have to tell you that I could not have gone through this change without him. Scott's great. Scott's doing fabulous in North Carolina. I'm doing better, but I couldn't be where I am without my husband. He has been my rock. He's supported me on days when I was so angry and all I wanted to do is vent and be mean and angry, and he allowed me to be that way. He's helped me study and find the right podcasts and do what I needed to do to move past this and find peace. I know that I'm going to be just fine. I know that our family's going to be just fine. And I know that our story is still being written. And I'm happy about where I am. I have incredibly loving friends who see me and love me just the way I am without conditions, and I love them that way too. I'm such a better person today. I'm less judgmental. I'm more open to people that are different than me. I love people just because I see their good hearts, and I hope they can feel that from me. I want to say that I am grateful that I gave birth to a gay son. He's changed my life, and it's so much better. It's been tough, but I'm glad I'm where I'm at. And I just want to thank my sweet Scott. And that's my story.
I might have to take a drink first. And you'll be glad that I might be reading this, because this is a subject that I can ramble on and on about, and I get very passionate and go off on about 1,300 different tangents. So I thought for your benefit that I better just write it down. So I'm sorry for reading it, but hopefully the message, the heart, the passion will come through. While the question of my precious son being gay had darted in and out of my consciousness for a few years, it took up permanent residence when I dropped him off at a new friend's house in 7th grade. His friend came out to the car to meet me, and I knew immediately this boy was gay. I have no recollection of how I responded to this adorable boy. I'm sure he thought my manners lacking, because I was not aware of anything other than the blaring sirens in my head alerting me to the impending danger to my son. Why would Kyle want to be friends with this boy? Did he not realize he would be teased for associating with him? What if he was like this boy? I still remember with vivid clarity what I felt like as I drove away from that house. Still remember. My heart was being ripped apart in a violent manner. I was sobbing. Oh, gosh, you'd think I could get through this after this many years of him being out. I was sobbing, gasping for breath, and finally pulled over to offer up a fervent prayer out loud to please not let Kyle be gay, because I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to navigate that for my child or my family. I never discussed this experience with him until a much later date. As time went on, I waited in the wings, ready to swoop in at a moment's notice should I be needed. I'm very adept at swooping into my children's lives. I watched him live his life on his terms and allowed him the space to figure things out on his own. I watched with an aching heart as his group of best friends, all church members, abandoned him on the first day of high school, lest they be branded by association, as rumors had already begun circulating. I watched incidences at church occur that brought him humiliation and pain, but when discussed with parents, I was met with, "Oh, boys will be boys," as if this would somehow alleviate the humiliation and the pain in my son's heart. He continued to fully participate in young men's priesthood responsibilities, earned his eagle in scouting. I watched him recreate his social life, becoming involved with many extracurricular activities at school, and maintaining his strong academic work ethic. He took the pain and allowed it to fuel his fierce determination to succeed in creating the life he envisioned for himself. He was enrolled in early college during his senior year of high school, and it was then that we had the conversation. While I knew the probability of hearing these words from him at some point was great, it still elicited a wave of grief within me because I now knew for a certainty his life would never be what I had envisioned for him. I immediately held him in my arms and told him it didn't matter at all, that he would always be loved and adored. And while my arms might have been embracing my 6-foot-tall 17-year-old son, I was envisioning my precious baby boy that I would fight any and everything to protect, and I always will. It was somewhat liberating to know that he could finally be open to at least us about what he truly felt. Though he never doubted his father's love, he was still concerned about how he would view having a gay son. When I discussed it with my husband, he immediately crumbled into tears when he thought of the pain that Kyle had borne alone while wrestling with what these feelings meant to his future, our family, and his place in the church. He remains one of Kyle's fiercest defenders and loves bragging about him to anyone that will listen. Having grown up in a strong LDS family and living in a ward where we associated with several apostles and a prophet, I had a firm foundation in the church, and I thought I knew exactly what my life would look like. Well, experienced a few deviations in that path, if not an occasional careening off the road. After calling off an engagement to a great guy who I knew in my heart was gay, I moved to Newport Beach, where I met my fabulous husband, and we married 6 months later. He was not a member of the church, but 7 years and 7 sets of missionaries later, he was baptized. He never gained the conviction and the desire to go to the temple, so our family was never sealed. This omission in what I then viewed as an essential step in our family's eternal progression was responsible for years of heartache for me, for him, because of the pressure I inflicted on him, and for our children as they were singled out in classes because their family was not sealed. Kyle had the added worry of wondering how he was supposed to live his life within the impossible structure of the church. I deeply regret the suffering that we all endured because of this, but that was my truth at that time. My firm foundation has been eroded, needless to say, through this process, and I have experienced many a faith crisis. I have sat through countless meetings wherein I have stifled my tears and my anger at the vile and cruel comments being shared by people I loved and admired. Ignorance, intolerance, and fear will always be a part of this life, but should most certainly not be a part of a church professing to contain the fullness of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm afraid his teachings are often lost amidst the misguided, self-righteous interpretations of man. Things really came to a head for me with the leak of the exclusion policy in November. There was nothing loving or anything godly about this policy. Something literally broke inside me, and I knew it would never be repaired. Though not active but remaining loyal to his foundation in the gospel, my son resigned his membership after the policy announcement. After all is said and done, I truly believe that we will be judged most, whether it be by a higher power or simply by ourselves, how our love or our lack of love impacted another's ability to grow, develop, and reach their divine potential, thereby living a happy life. What could be more important than this? Simply loving one another, celebrating and learning from one another's differences and perspectives, and carrying one another's burdens in an effort to lighten the pain and suffering. This is what our LGBTQ kids need from everyone. This is what they deserve from everyone, above all from their parents. For years, I was determined to remain within the church, despite the pain at times, in order to lovingly and patiently educate, providing a personal aspect to this issue, and to provide solace and direction to others that discovered they would be navigating this path for which they too would feel ill-equipped. But because of many circumstances and much personal study, I now believe I can accomplish this outside of the church, as I no longer feel like it is a place I can remain with my integrity intact. However, I do not fault those who choose to remain, trying to create a safe place for LGBTQ individuals and their families. It's a personal choice that everybody must make according to their circumstances and their heart. I count Kyle being gay as one of my most treasured gifts. In fact, I say this and people look at me with just such like, oh, you don't mean this. But I've had people say, well, but if you had a choice, wouldn't you wish him to be straight? Absolutely not. No way. It would change who he was. It would change the experience. It would change the bond. He is who he is, and he is supposed to be, and he is perfect in my eyes. I'm deeply grateful to have been entrusted with this unique and what I view as a sacred calling of being a mother to a gay child. I have been challenged to re-examine what love truly means, unconditional love, and that has enabled me to see my fellow travelers in this life with a new eye. Through my experiences as a mama dragon and working as an ally in this community, I have been taught crucial and invaluable lessons as I have opened my mind, and more importantly, my heart, to people that have shared beauty, love, and wisdom beyond what I could have imagined. I have developed an increased depth of love and empathy, and now have such a profound desire to share, with the hope that others with gay family members will be able to come to this same realization that they're in such a blessed situation where they can too learn to love in a way far beyond what they realized they were capable, thereby forever impacting lives, even saving lives as a result. And just as a little ending, my Kyle is absolutely, he is perfect. He really is. He's very, very happy living, sharing his life with a darling guy, which we adore, and I really hope they get married, maybe not really, really soon, but he's enjoying great professional success. I'm the proud grandmother of a 4-legged grandson named Xander, and I do hope there are some 2-legged ones in his future.
So I'm going to tell you about my gay daughter, who is 31. And when she was 3, there was a TV show that she really liked, and it was called Today's Special. This was in the 80s. And there was, some people remember this, so there was a mannequin. It was a woman named Jody, and she would put up displays in the middle of the night in this department store. And then there was a mannequin named Jeff, and he was magical, and he had a magic hat. And so when the hat was on him, then he came to life, and he could have adventures with Jody. But then every once in a while, the magic hat would be knocked off, and he would freeze, and he would become a mannequin again. And he would be stuck like that until Jody could come and put the hat back on him. Well, my daughter Erin was very imaginative, and she loved this show, and we spent a lot of hours pretending to be these characters. I was Jody, of course, and she was Jeff, and her little brother had to be Muffy this mouse. And so and my husband was Sam the watchman, but he didn't know that because he was always at work. But and so she would, we would play, and then all of a sudden she would like shake the hat off, and then I would notice. Sometimes she'd stand there for a little while because I was doing something else. I'm like, oh, she's frozen, and I'd go get the hat and put it back on her. So and then also at 3, she told me, I don't ever want to wear bows in my hair again. I don't want to wear pink or purple or flowers or polka dots. And when she was 10, she told me she didn't want to wear a girl's bathing suit that year, and that she wanted to wear a boy's bathing suit with a t-shirt. And so that's what we did. When she was in high school, she was the drummer in a punk band with all guys. She's a really awesome drummer. During this time, she also started really struggling with some emotional problems, with some mental illness. And there were times that I wish I had a magic hat that I could put on her head. She seemed so stuck and so frozen at times in these kind of really bad places. But I didn't have any magic like that. She did date in high school, but I could tell that there was a girl that was a friend that was a more important relationship than her high school boyfriend was. All these things, in my mind, I knew that she probably was gay. But it was, I believed that there was, at that time even, that there was a spectrum, and I thought, this will be up to her how she wants to do this, how she chooses to live this. When she was in college, she met a man, and they became engaged. He was a returned missionary, and I was happy and thinking this is the path she's choosing, until I saw them together for the first time, and that's when I knew for sure that she was gay. I could see that she didn't like him to touch her. She would flinch when he put his arm around her. And I think he was her best friend, and he thought he was marrying this awesome girl who was, like a guy, because she could rock climb and mountain bike and was a drummer. And I just thought, this is not going to work out. So they were off and on for 4 years, and then when she ended that relationship, then I knew she was ending the relationship because she realized that she couldn't be with a man. But I saw her just really struggling, and really, I really struggled myself with, like, do I say to her, honey, it's okay, I think you're gay? Like, was she ready for that? Was she, like, I didn't have any direction, I didn't have any guidance, there weren't any books to tell you, like, how do you like talk to your daughter and say, I think you're gay? I didn't know if that was, and I think a part of me thought, if I say it out loud, then it's true. And I think I had that fear. And so I didn't say anything to her. And then she went to PA school, and she's a PA, and she just really continued to struggle emotionally. Then one day she asked if she could bring a friend home for the weekend, and she brought this woman home, and I could tell that this was a really significant relationship for her. She was glowing, she was happy. This girl was, beautiful, also a PA from PA school, and I just thought, she's going to tell me that she's gay, and she didn't tell me, and I just was like, I don't know what to do now. I want to be open and honest with her. That winter, my mother and I went on a cruise together, and I met a lesbian couple who'd recently been married, and at a certain point in the cruise, I found them alone, and I went and talked to them, and my mother wasn't with me because my mother didn't know yet. No one knew. I'd never said it out loud before, and so for the first time, I asked these girls their advice on how I could talk to my daughter and say, I think you're gay, and I said it for the first time. I said, my daughter is gay, and in that moment, I felt, just such a sense of loss, even though it was something I'd prepared myself for from the time she was a child, this loss of what was never going to be, that she wasn't going to marry a man in the temple, and she wasn't going to have, what I considered a normal life, and that this was going to be a struggle. But as I accepted that, I really was able just to move to a place of just complete love and absolute acceptance of who she is. So when I came back from the cruise, she came to visit, and I was just like, okay, we have to talk now. And the visit was really busy, and then finally, like at the end of the visit, we were in her bedroom, and she was just getting ready to leave, and then she said, I'm like, I've got to say it now. And then she turned to me and she said, "You know I'm gay, right?" And I'm like, yeah, I know you're gay. And and then she says, you know I'm in love with Laura. And I'm like, I know that, I can tell that. And that was like it. And then she goes, well, I gotta go. Can you tell Dad, because I have to go? And so I'm like, okay, I'll tell your dad. And he, of course, was just accepting, because we just wanted our daughter to be happy, completely happy, and be completely who she is. Sadly, that relationship broke up. They were together for 3 years, and so she's struggling now again with some mental illness issues, and it's been one of the hardest years of our life. And that was exacerbated by the exclusion policy that came out in November. That was just like a knife through my heart, because I realized that I no longer had a safe place in the Mormon Church for me, emotionally or spiritually. At that time, Erin had luckily resigned her membership years before, and so the exclusion policy didn't really affect her, except from the standpoint of it affects all of our gay children who have grown up in the church, whether they stay active or not, because there's a whole group of people that they associated with that now say there's something wrong with them. And so I actually had someone say to me, "Why is your daughter upset?" Because she's no longer a member. And that is why. I stand in opposition to this exclusion policy. I believe it is damaging and dangerous for our children that are LGBT, and the ones that are yet to come out, the ones that are babies, the ones that are children that are going to be coming out as LGBT. This is a very dangerous policy for them. We've seen suicides in the community. We've attended one of our good friends' son that ended his life earlier this year. This policy was so upsetting for me personally. Besides Erin leaving the church, 2 of my other children have also resigned their membership. They weren't active, but they just said at that point, I don't want to have my name counted on the records of the church. So 5 of my 5 children, 3 children are no longer active. But really the thing that really seized my heart when I heard about this policy was I thought about a boy or a girl sitting in seminary knowing that they're gay, they haven't come out yet, and now they are panicked and devastated inside. And what am I going to do is how they're feeling. And that's why we do what we do, because not just for our own children, but we tell stories because stories change people's hearts. And that's what we're about changing people's hearts. And I believe that we can, and I believe that people in this church and in this world can and will continue to evolve toward love and toward complete acceptance of these children and of our lovely, beautiful, amazing LGBTQIA members of our society. Thank you.
We have a very short time for questions, but we have to do it. I may go let the children come down on a soft release to spare the child care, but I do want these ladies to be able to answer questions that you have, so let's take maybe 3 to 5 questions. And you might need to specify who your question's for, but I'll let them pass the mic.
Scott did serve a mission. He went to the mission field, Long Beach, California, Spanish speaking. He only served for 8 months. He didn't do well on his mission, and we were told by his mission president that he just should stick it out, he'll be fine. But Scott was secretly finding times when he could call, and he would talk to Mark and I about what was happening. He was doing some pretty negative behaviors. He was not well. And now that I look back on what we should have done, Mark and I should have gotten on a plane and gone and got him home sooner. When my son that I left at the MTC tall, handsome, excited. When he came off the plane 8 months later, he didn't even look like my child. The pain that he showed was obvious, and it was not a good experience, and it was a hard time for all of us.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, LG, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual.
They're hard to keep track of, aren't they?
And the definitions are a little bit even harder, so we still are, I don't know. Yeah, but that's what they stand for.
Very much so.
So what kind of impact do you guys see through the Mama Dragons, like, community efforts? What kind of changes have you seen happen?
I can just speak for me. Mama Dragons started because it was moms who had nowhere to go. If you went to your bishop and said, you've got a gay child, the bishop would say, oh, well, here's a pamphlet. It's gotten much better, but when our kids came out, there was really nothing there. So the Mama Dragons started as just a way for us moms to connect and support each other and try and show love for our kids and try and reconcile the church. Most of us were all in when we started. That's how the group started. It was Mormon moms. So it's morphed, it's changed, it's grown huge. We've got people from really all over the world now that are part of this group. And it's mainly about us as moms trying to do whatever we can to help the kids that we come in contact with. I think that we're at every kind of group we can be to support people. We're marching in parades. We're at booths, setting up booths for people to come and ask questions. We're just trying to get it out there and be loving about all of our kids.
And I think, too, this was already pretty much covered, but just the fear that you feel when you realize you have a gay child, especially years ago when we all went through this, you really do feel like you are the only one that's going through this. And logically, you know you're not, because obviously there are thousands upon thousands, obviously, of gay people in our community. It's just that you feel like you are just totally ill-equipped. You have no idea what to do. So the idea that there are so many other mothers that have done this successfully, that have wonderful bonds with their children are safe and celebrated, and that's the purpose as well, just so that people can feel like, okay, you know what, I can do this. I can be successful at this and get my child through this. So. I'll just quickly say, honestly, my family's been phenomenal, like from the get-go. I will say that we kept it from my 87-year-old mother. She wasn't 87 when he came out, but we literally just told her last October. Good timing, right before the November policy, right? But we had to, because there were different things in the news and in the paper and stuff, and I didn't want her reading my name, and thinking, now why is she talking about all of this? So she was phenomenal too, though. So I've had really good.
Just want to say one thing. When this started happening for me, my sister, who's my best friend, wrote me a 5-page letter telling me that how could I lose my faith? How could I go against everything I'd known? How I had become very worldly. Satan was knocking on my door and I was listening. Everything bad she told me in that letter. And that sent me into a spiral. I had to go from there to a counselor. I had to get on some medication for depression because it didn't only show to me that this is what my siblings were thinking about me, but I believed that the neighborhood and my Mormon world was also feeling those same kinds of things about me. It was so hard. So yes, things changed for me. And I've kept secret a lot of things now, and I know who's safe to talk to and who's not. But my family, my siblings, my parents, Mark's mom, his brothers and sister, his brothers don't know a lot about this. It would just be heartbreaking for them and too hard.
I began the process of coming out back in the early 90s, and this was like long before there was any Mama Dragon or anything like that. It took me, it was awful. I went through the whole comparative therapy thing, and I, did the whole driving in the car in shame like we were talking about. And it took me years to realize, looking back at my parents' experience, in particular my mom's experience. My mom dove into a really deep depression. She just reacted very, very badly to it. And I've got a gay brother also. She went through that twice with siblings. And it took me years to realize that even though I was going through a lot of that and trying to deal with it, she was too. Because one of the prime messages that she got from the church was that if her kids weren't exactly in line with the successful model of what Mormon kids are supposed to be, it was her fault as a parent. And there have been some really overt messages within many things the church has said about homosexuality that it is in fact a feeling of the parent. And I'm wondering if that's something that you encounter when you have new people come into the youth. You have to sort of contend with many of these negative messages.
Well, I've struggled with that myself for sure, and not just my gay child. I have children that aren't active, and I think we all struggle with that to a certain degree. That we have this picture of, this is your, there's no success can compensate for failure in the home. We all know that so well, and so then you feel like I failed at like the only thing I was supposed to really do, And so I know I have struggled with that. I think our community of us women coming together and all of us supporting each other and saying, you're okay, I'm okay, and just loving each other and laughing about some of it and just being able to, really have a community of women that we all get that. We all know how bad we have felt about that, and we reject that. And we just say that is not how we are going to frame how we are as mothers. But I think we do that for each other, really, but it's hard.
I've been through 10 high schools, they start to get blurry. No point planting roots, cause you're gone in a hurry. My dad keeps 2 suitcases packed in the den, so it's only a matter of when. I don't learn the names, don't bother with faces. All I can trust is this concrete oasis. Seems every time I'm about to despair, there's a 7-Eleven right there.